This is Professor Rogers. This presentation reviews the binary distribution and shows how to recode any categorical distribution into a series of binary variables. A binary distribution is based on there being only two values, 1 if the situation is present and 0 if the situation is not present. Whether a state has the death penalty is an example. Out of the 50 states in the District of Columbia, 32 have the death penalty and 19 do not. We will use this example to understand how binomial probabilities are calculated. We begin by defining a couple of terms. Let P be the binomial probability, that is, the probability of the situation. It is the number of events divided by the n. There are 32 states with the death penalty and an n of 51, so we have a probability of approximately 0.627. If we multiply the binomial probability by 100, we get the percent found in the frequency table. Let Q be the number of non-events expressed as a probability. It is easily calculated as 1 minus P. While we often say a variable is categorical or numeric, the binary falls in between. It can be either, depending on what you want to do with it. Like numeric variables, it has a mean and a standard deviation. We will work through these calculations here. The mean of the binomial distribution is the binomial probability. Notice that the same value calculated by hand on the right is equivalent to the number in the SPSS output, the only difference being rounding. The standard deviation is the square root of the variance. The variance of a binomial distribution is P times Q. By hand, the number is approximately 0.484. Notice that this number is different from the standard deviation calculated in SPSS, which gives us a standard deviation of 0.488. The difference is not rounding, but is due to the use of the sum of squares to calculate the variance in SPSS, as is typical in calculating the standard deviation for a numeric variable. The numeric calculation of the standard deviation is regarded as an approximation of the binomial standard deviation, and the difference between the two diminishes as the n increases in size. In many types of statistical analyses, the numeric calculation is regarded as acceptable, though there is among statisticians some debate on the matter and some efforts to apply adjustments to the numeric calculation. In statistics, categorical data with 3 or more categories is often broken into a string of variables with values of 0 and 1, known as binary variables, dichotomous variables, or dummy variables. We learn how to make these variables as part of this presentation using the example of creating the variable south from the variable region. We refer to this action as recoding. In the top menu, go to Transform, and then use the command Recode into different variables. I always prefer to recode into a different variable rather than use the same variables just in case I make a mistake. I do not want to lose the original data. We use the example of south. South has the value of 3 in the variable region. Here is the Recode command dialog box in SPSS. Those using PSPP will see a very similar box with only slight variations in where the items are placed. There are 4 steps in setting up the command dialog box. First, we toggle the variable that we want to recode into the numeric variable box in the center. Second, we enter the name of the variable that we want to create. Third, we click Change. Finally, we click Old and New Values. Here the command box is set up for the variable south. This screenshot was taken after the third of the 4 steps. South is the name of the new variable. The change button has already been hit, which automatically enters south into the numeric variable box. When we click on Old and New Variables, we get the screen shown here. Information for the old variable is placed on the left, and information for the new variable is placed in the upper right-hand side. In the old value, we put the value from the variable region in the value box. The value of south in the variable region is 3. We are creating a binary variable, so in the new variable we want south to have a value of 1. When we click on the Add button in the middle of the box, the values appear in the box on the right. This box tells us we are converting 3 in the old variable to 1 in the new variable. We want to recode everything else as 0. On the old variable side of the equation, we click all other values. On the new value side, we enter 0. Click the Add button and we see that everything else is recorded as 0. When everything is ready, click Continue, which takes us back to the original command dialog box. Hit Change again and a new variable will be created. We do not get a message from SPSS that our recode was a success. Instead, we must run a frequency distribution on our new variable to make sure that it is correct. Here is the SPSS output from the frequencies command for the variable south. The binomial distribution makes it possible to use categorical variables as numeric ones. The advantage of this recoding may not be obvious now, but can be quite useful with more advanced statistics. In our example, we can create a variable for each region of the country. We saw this process was done with the category south. We would have to do this process 3 more times to have the entire set of categories in a dummy format. The result then gives us 4 new variables: northeast, midwest, south, and west. The process is a cumbersome one. Sometimes we do not need it. Some SPSS and PSPP procedures will run categorical variables as factors without relying on binary recodes. But the recodes allow us to use a larger number of procedures and give us more control over the analysis.